Shayla, hey girl, hey. It's Kroger. It's Helene, hey girl, hey. Okay. Uncle JB. Rise and shine. Let's fix this. Did I get a chance to rest yesterday? I know some people still had to work. Blessings, Divine. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, I still don't understand how all the pens are all over the house, right? You know, let me not blame them. I could have left it. I could have left it out. Hold on. I got this same little ritual I do with my stuff every morning. My cord. Take my pen and stick it in my book. It's possible I could have forgot to put it in there and left it out. And they swiped it. It's possible. Like I said, I ain't gonna blame them. I had to get another pen for myself. Happy Thursday, everybody. Happy Thursday. We're almost done with Chronicles, y'all. Second Chronicles. Alright, y'all. It is Thursday. Whew. I just looked at the date. It is Thursday, May the 20th, 2021, day 158 of year 3 of reading through the books of the Law and the Prophets, and of the 3-year consecutive day count, day 827. Y'all, today we're reading 2 Chronicles 27, 28, and 29. Then we're going to pick up in Fossilized Cousins on page 71. Alright, so let's get started with the Shema. Books of Chronicles, and Untitled Chapters. It's 36 chapters. Alright. Spot. Oh, beautiful people. Josiah. Shalom. Shalom. Alright, now I'm putting up the Shema. I wonder if Dana here yet. Dana, you here? I answered your question about the covenant of salt. Some of y'all may have read it because I made a whole little post about it. I had fun looking it up. Okay, Shema. It's found in Deuteronomy chapter 6. Remember, read the entire chapter. Shalom, Joanne, shalom. Hear, therefore, O Israel, and observe to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may increase mightily, as Yahuwah, the God of our fathers, has promised us in the land that flows with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, Yahuwah, our God, He is one God, and you shall love Yahuwah, your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I command you this day shall be in your heart, and you shall teach them diligently unto your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them upon the posts of your house and on your gates. And Yahuwah commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear Yahuwah our God for our good always, that he might preserve us alive as it is at this day. And they shall be our righteousness if we observe to do all these commandments before Yahuwah our God as he has commanded us. All right, beautiful people. So, Dana, I don't think she here yet. She will definitely respond by now. I was going to ask about the covenant of salt again if she saw the answer. But just in case you didn't see it or you didn't go back to that video, because I posted it on the video for, Thursday? On Tuesday's video, back in the section, when I went and looked up what is a covenant of salt, that's Dana asked the question. It was in 2 Chronicles, Chapter 13, where we read over it, and she kind of pulled it out. We just kind of, we just read over it. But to make a long story short, it's a pact, a covenant of salt. When it says that Yahuwah makes a covenant of salt with us, that means it's an everlasting pact, an everlasting agreement, something that he has promised. And it's pretty much kind of written in stone. But you will see it in a couple other places. You will also see it in the book of Numbers. I forgot the chapter. It's 2 more places where it talks specifically about a covenant of salt. And if you read in different versions, it may remove the term covenant of salt, and it'll just say they'll change the words out. They'll change out covenant of salt, and it'll just say Yahuwah said, Ezra, thank you, Dan. Are you here? It'll say yeah, in several other places. Okay, she said, good morning, thanks for the reply. We saw it in several other verses. Yes, as well as a couple other places. It'll just kind of change out the word covenant of salt. Now that we understand what covenant of salt is, it'll just use like the definition instead of saying covenant of salt. So it'll say like an eternal covenant or an eternal agreement, So when you see that, most of it, at least from the few places that I look, it's covenant of salt. So if you ever see that, it was good. Okay. Oh, no worries, sis. Belinda Brown. Shalom. Shalom, auntie. Okay. All right. Yeah. Let's get started with our reading today. 2 Chronicles Chapter 27. Jotham was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 16 years. His mother was Jeshurun, the daughter of Zadok. Jotham did what was pleasing in Yahuwah's sight. He did everything his father Uzziah had done, except that Jotham did not sin by entering the temple of Yahuwah, but the people continued in their corrupt ways. Alicia Yah, Trina Betwabu. Jotham rebuilt the upper gate of the temple of Yahuwah. He also did extensive rebuilding on the wall at the hill of Ophel. He built towns in the hill country of Judah and constructed fortresses and towers in the wooded area. Jotham went to war against the Ammonites and conquered them. Over the next 3 years, he received from them an annual tribute of 7,500 pounds of silver, 50,000 bushels of wheat, and 50,000 bushels of barley. King Jotham became very powerful because he was careful to live in obedience to Yahuwah, his God. The rest of the events of Jotham's reign, including all his wars and other activities, are recorded in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 16 years. When Jotham died, he was buried in the city of David, and his son Ahaz became the next king. All right, y'all. Next chapter, 2 Chronicles Chapter 28. Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 16 years. He did not do what was pleasing in Yahuwah's sight as his ancestor David had done. Instead, he followed the example of the kings of Israel. He cast metal images for the worship of Baal. He offered sacrifices in the valley of Ben Hinnom, even sacrificing his own sons in the fire. In this way, he followed the detestable practices of the pagan nations Yahuwah had driven from the land ahead of the Israelites. He offered sacrifices and burned incense at the pagan shrines and on the hills and under every green tree. Eddie, shalom, shalom. So it also mentions right here where it said he was even sacrificing his own sons in the fire. We know human sacrifice is abominable, and it is a no-no. All kinds of human sacrifice. I don't care if it's from the little people all the way up to the big people that they say is somebody. It's forbidden, right? Because of this, Yahuwah, his God, allowed the king of Aram to defeat Ahaz and to exile large numbers of his people to Damascus. The armies of the king of Israel also defeated Ahaz and inflicted many casualties on his army. In a single day, Pekah, son of Remaliah, Israel's king, killed 120,000 of Judah's troops, all of them experienced warriors because they had abandoned Yahuwah, the God of their ancestors. Then Zikri, a warrior from Ephraim, killed Maaseiah, the king's son, Azrikam, the king's palace commander, and Elkanah, the king's second-in-command. The armies of Israel captured 200,000 women and children from Judah and seized tremendous amounts of plunder, which they took back to Samaria. But a prophet of Yahuwah named Oded was there in Samaria when the army of Israel returned home. He went out to meet them and said, Yahuwah, the God of your ancestors, was angry with Judah and let you defeat them, but you have gone too far, killing them without mercy, and all heaven is disturbed. And now you are planning to make slaves of these people from Judah and Jerusalem? What about your own sins against Yahuwah your God? Listen to me and return these prisoners you have taken, for they are your own relatives. Watch out, because now Yahuwah's fierce anger has been turned against you. Then some of the leaders of Israel, Azariah, son of Jehonan, Berechiah, son of Meshillamoth, Jehiskiah, son of Shalem, and Amasa, son of Hadlai, agreed with this and confronted the men returning from battle. You must not bring the prisoners here, they declared. We cannot afford to add to our sins and guilt. Our guilt is already great, and Yahuwah's fierce anger is already turned against Israel. So the warriors released the prisoners and handed over the plunder in the sight of all the leaders and all the people. Then the four men just mentioned by name came forward and distributed clothes from the plunder to the prisoners who were naked. They provided clothing and sandals to wear, gave them enough food and drink, and dressed their wounds with olive oil. They put those who were weak on donkeys and took all the prisoners back to their own people in Jericho, the city of palms. Then they returned to Samaria. Sound like that's going to be happening again pretty soon. At the same time, King Ahaz of Judah asked the king of Assyria for help. The armies of Edom had again invaded Judah and taken captives, and the Philistines had raided towns located in the foothills of Judah and in the Negev of Judah. They had already captured and occupied Beth-Shemesh, Ajalon, Gederoth, Soko with its villages, Timnah with its villages, and Gizmo with its villages. Yahuwah was humbling Judah because of King Ahaz of Judah, for he had encouraged his people to sin and had been utterly unfaithful to Yahuwah. So when King Tiglath-Pileser of Assyria arrived, he attacked Ahaz instead of helping him. Ahaz took valuable items from Yahuwah's temple, the royal palace, and from the homes of his officials, and gave them to the king of Assyria as tribute, but this did not help him. Even during this time of trouble, King Ahaz continued to reject Yahuwah. He offered sacrifices to the gods of Damascus who had defeated him, for he said, since these gods helped the kings of Aram, they will help me too if I sacrifice to them. But instead, they led to his ruin and the ruin of all of Judah. The king took various articles from the temple of Yahuwah and broke them into pieces. He shut the doors of Yahuwah's temple so that no one could worship there. And he set up altars to pagan gods in every corner of Jerusalem. He made pagan shrines in all the towns of Judah for offering sacrifices to other gods. In this way, he aroused the anger of Yahuwah and the God of his ancestors. The rest of the events of Ahaz's reign and everything he did from beginning to end are recorded in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. When Ahaz died, he was buried in Jerusalem, but not in the royal cemetery of the kings of Judah. Then his son Hezekiah became the next king. They do use like this salt covenant. I read about that in a Jewish marriage feast and stuff. But I was just getting to the base of what it is. Pulling out all of that, I would have had to add a whole lot more to it on what they using. But it differs a little bit. It differs a little bit. I mean, I guess the principles are the same, Joanne. The principles are the same, but then you bring in the ketubah and all of that stuff, and it's nice. But the principles, the foundational principles of what a covenant of salt is, it's an eternal agreement, eternal covenant. You can use that for marriage, right? 2 Chronicles Chapter 29. Hezekiah was 25 years old when he became the king of Judah, and he reigned in Jerusalem 29 years. His mother was Abijah, the daughter of Zechariah. He did what was pleasing in Yahuwah's sight, just as his ancestor David had done. In the very first moment of the first year of his reign, Hezekiah reopened the doors of the temple Hezekiah reopened the doors of the temple of Yahuwah and repaired them. He summoned the priests and the Levites to meet him at the courtyard east of the temple. He said to them, "Listen to me, you Levites. Purify yourselves and purify the temple of Yahuwah, the God of your ancestors. Remove all the defiled things from the sanctuary. Our ancestors were unfaithful and did what was evil in the sight of Yahuwah our God. They abandoned Yahuwah and his dwelling place, and they turned their backs on him. They also shut the doors of the temple's entry room, and they snuffed out the lamps. They stopped burning incense and presenting burnt offerings at the sanctuary of the God of Israel. That is why Yahuwah's anger has fallen upon Judah and Jerusalem. He has made them an object of dread, horror, and ridicule, as you can see with your own eyes. Because of this, our fathers have been killed in battle, and our sons and daughters and wives have been captured. But now I will make a covenant with Yahuwah, the God of Israel, so that his fierce anger will turn away from us. My sons, do not neglect your duties any longer. Yahuwah has chosen you to stand in his presence to minister to him and to lead the people in worship and present offerings to him." Then the Levites got right to work. From the clan of Kohath, Mahab, son of Amasai, and Joel, son of Azariah. From the clan of Merari, Kish, son of Abdi, and Azariah, son of Jehaleel. From the clan of Gershom, Joah, son of Zimmah, and Eden, son of Joah. From the family of Elizaphan, Shimri, and Jael. From the family of Asaph, Zechariah, and Mattaniah. From the family of Heman, Jehiel, and Shimei. From the family of Jeduthun, Shemaiah, and Uzziel. These men called together their fellow Levites, and they all purified themselves. Then they began to cleanse the temple of Yahuwah, just as the king had commanded. They were careful to allow Yahuwah's instructions in their They were careful to follow all Yahuwah's instructions in their work. The priests went into the sanctuary of the temple of Yahuwah to cleanse it, and they took out the temple courtyard. And they took out to the temple courtyard all the defiled things they found. From there, the Levites carted it all out to the Kidron Valley. They began the work in early spring on the first day of the new year, and in 8 days they had reached the entry room of Yahuwah's temple. Then they purified the temple of Yahuwah itself, which took another 8 days. So the entire task was completed in 16 days. Then the Levites went to King Hezekiah and gave him this report. "We have cleansed the entire temple of Yahuwah, the altar of burnt offerings with all its utensils, and the table of the bread of the presence with all its utensils. We have also recovered all the items discarded by King Ahaz when he was unfaithful and closed the temple. They are now in the front of the altar of Yahuwah, purified and ready for use." Early the next morning, King Hezekiah gathered the city officials and went to the temple of Yahuwah. They brought 7 bulls, 7 rams, and 7 male lambs as a burnt offering, together with 7 male goats as a sin offering for the kingdom, for the temple, and for Judah. The king commanded the priests, who were descendants of Aaron, to sacrifice the animals on the altar of Yahuwah. So they killed the bulls, and the priests took the blood and sprinkled it on the altar. Next, they killed the rams and sprinkled their blood on the altar. And finally, they did the same with the male lambs. The male goats for the sin offering were then brought before the king and the assembly of the people, who laid their hands on them. The priests then killed the goats as a sin offering and sprinkled their blood on the altar to make atonement for the sins of all of Israel. The king had specifically commanded that this burnt offering and sin offering should be made for all of Israel. King Hezekiah then stationed the Levites at the temple of Yahuwah with cymbals, lyres, and harps. He obeyed all the commands that Yahuwah had given to King David through Gad, the king's seer, and the prophet Nathan. The Levites then took their positions around the temple with the instruments of David, and the priests took their positions with the trumpets. Then Hezekiah ordered that the burnt offerings be placed on the altar. As the burnt offering was presented, songs of praise to Yahuwah were begun, accompanied by the trumpets and other instruments of David, the former king of Israel. The entire assembly worshiped Yahuwah as the singers sang and the trumpets blew until all the burnt offerings were finished. Then the king and everyone with him bowed down and worshiped. King Hezekiah and the officials ordered the Levites to praise Yahuwah with the psalms written by David and by Asaph the seer. So they offered joyous praise and bowed down and worshiped. Then Hezekiah declared, "Now that you have consecrated yourselves to Yahuwah, bring your sacrifices and thanksgiving offerings to the temple of Yahuwah." So the people brought their sacrifices and thanksgiving offerings, and all whose hearts were willing brought burnt offerings too. The people brought to Yahuwah 70 bulls, 100 rams, and 200 male lambs for burnt offerings. They also brought 600 cattle and 3,000 sheep and goats and sacred offerings. They also brought 600 cattle and 3,000 sheep and goats as sacred offerings. But there were too few priests to prepare all the burnt offerings. So their relatives, the Levites, helped them until the work was finished and more priests had been purified. For the Levites had been more conscientious about purifying themselves than the priests had been. There was an abundance of burnt offerings along with the usual liquid offerings and a great deal of fat from the many peace offerings. So the temple of Yahuwah was restored to service, and Hezekiah and all the people rejoiced because of what Yahuwah had done for the people, for everything had been accomplished so quickly. All right, beautiful people. So that was our reading for today from the books of the Law and the Prophets. That was 2 Chronicles 27, 28, and 29. Let's blow this up here. Okay, y'all. So we're going to pick up where we left off at. On page 71, we stopped right here above this picture of, what is this? It says a bull being hacked to death. Hold on. Okay. So right here on page 71, we're going to start right here, this paragraph right under this picture, and this begins to explain what this picture is. So I'll go ahead and show the picture first. That's a knife in this guy's hand right here. Alright. Okay. At the spring equinox, new initiates into the mysteries of the cult were baptized or sprinkled in blood under a bull being hacked to death. This was a time which the Earth's orbit crossed the celestial equator. These sun worshippers interpreted this as Mithras slaying the bull. The sun had crossed over the celestial equator, overcoming the bull, which they called the constellation of Taurus, or Taurus is Latin for bull. Every mass, M-A-S-S, what you doing, Tilly? Don't do that right now, because you want those plants are too heavy for you to move. So put that back. Wait till I'm done. Then I give you one. And don't start. I'm going to send you upstairs. Put it back. Already trying to go in there and get freeze pops first thing in the morning. No, you're not. Because you're not going to be able to move these two plants. No. Bella, I'm about to send you upstairs, little lady. Every mass is a black mass. The pagan mind mixed this up with the Passover Seder, also known, I'm sorry, not also, let me read that again. Every mass, M-A-S-S, is a black mass. The pagan mind mixed this up with the Passover Seder, known as the Last Supper, and poof, that's what it says, and poof, the magic became our Sunday morning supper. You have just broken the truth barrier, as I call it. The word abracadabra was used during the Mithridatic Mystery Mass when they transubstantiated a sun-shaped disc of bread into the sun and ate it. You can find this out by digging it up in a library or the internet. The Catholic priest is believed to be endowed with the power to transubstantiate any bread into Yahusha simply by saying the words Hoc est corpus meum, this is my body. This produced the phrase Hocus Pocus, a euphemism for any type of sleight of hand. Other words, the Jedi-Mind trick, right? Let me read this again. Hold on, y'all. Listen to this. The Catholic priest is believed to be endowed with the power to transubstantiate any bread into Yahusha, right? If he has been given the power, is the beast given the power, all that stuff, right? If he's been given the power to transubstantiate any bread into Yahusha, or what they would say, JC, come on, guys, this gotta make you think, right? This gotta make you think, right? Why would the beast system, do anything, right, to help Yahuwah? It doesn't, right? It puts you further to sleep. And if they say the Catholic priest has the power to transubstantiate any bread into JC, or into you just change the name of the false idol god you worship. You come out of the Christian church, you find your Hebrew roots, but you still hold on to that blood sacrifice. But you no longer call him JC. You calling him Yahusha, or Yahusha, or Yeshua, or Yahoshua, or Yahushua. Should make us think, people. Right? Let me read it. The Catholic priest is believed to be endowed with the power to transubstantiate any bread into Yahusha simply by saying the words Hoc est corpus meum, which means this is my body. This produced the phrase Hocus Pocus. That's going to be our title today. Abracadabra, Hocus Pocus. That's exactly what they're doing in church, right? All religions. This produced the phrase Hocus Pocus, a euphemism for any type of sleight of hand. The Mandeans also had 7 sacraments, among which were holy matrimony, the Eucharist, or the sun disk bread wafer, confession, holy orders, and the Mass of the Dead itself. Eyes are open. Levon, say that, sis. Eyes are open now. Listen. Look, some of this. Oh man. Let's finish reading and see what he say. Right? Okay. Let's go back up. The Mandeans also had 7 sacraments, among which were holy matrimony, the Eucharist, sun disk bread wafer, confession, holy orders, and the Mass of the Dead itself. They were sun worshippers, from which a church father, Augustine, had come from. Augustine had come from. There was never an indoor altar in the ceremonial law of Yahuwah, and now there is no need for any altar. This right here says, our rabbi had to die but once, and he said, Shalom, it is finished, fulfilled, completed, paid in full. That is wrong, right? That's a little bit of leaven. Yeah, and if he died, he stayed dead, right? And they turned and they made him a god, right? Hold on. Let's cross out this right here. Our rabbi had to die but once. You only get once to die, right? Well, some people get to die a couple times and come back, right? Yahuwah let them come back. They die on the table, then they come back. They die on the table and come back. Because some are resuscitated, not on the table. The paramedics or somebody resuscitate them, but y'all get what I'm saying. The Hebrew word shalom means more than peace. The RCC, or RCC is Roman Catholic Church, hasn't gotten the message. Catholicism calls the Mass a bloodless sacrifice, offering the miraculous transformed bread into the body of Yahushua to the Father over and over. But hold on. But Hebrews 9:22 says, without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. Let me say this. Let me read this. And then I'll say this, right? Because we know all the shenanigans in the New Testament, and a lot of our people, when they don't realize how much leaven has been added here, they hold on to these types of scriptures, which are a complete blasphemy and a complete opposite of what Yahuwah has said, right? But a lot of stuff in Hebrews should really be crossed out. It should be burnt to ashes. It really should. Right? Hold on. Listen, I'm gonna read this. We talk about it all the time, but I'll talk about it again. Let me just read this section. He said, but Hebrews 9:22 says, without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. At Hebrews 9:28 it says, Mashiach was sacrificed once to take away the sins of many people. See Hebrews chapter 10, verse 12 also. He cannot be sacrificed over and over again. There was no such term as Christmas until the 9th century. Going back to the 6th century, there was a time when years were not reckoned as we think of today. Okay, so right here, go ahead if you got your book. If you have a permanent marker, just etch all through that, right? Because that goes against what Yahuwah says. First of all, we know human sacrifice is unauthorized. It is forbidden by Yahuwah. Yahuwah says it over and over again. He kept getting on the people. He said, stop sacrificing your sons and daughters. If Yahuwah's constantly telling people, stop sacrificing your sons and daughters, would he then sacrifice his son? Would he? Let's use some common sense here, people. Shalom, Mom. Would he? No, he would not. He said, do not be like the pagan nations. And if the pagan nations was doing that, would he then go and do what the pagan nations were doing? After he spent all this time repeating over and over and over again, telling us not to be like them, don't do that. He said, it never even crossed my mind to do such a thing. We read in Jeremiah, right? With the sacrificing of the sons and daughters. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's the biggest portion of leaven that we will find in the New Testament, which if you study just a little bit deeper, we will find that what has been tampered with in the Old Testament, they added stuff to it to make you believe that it connects to the New Testament leaven. Thereby where they can say, oh, this, see back here, this was a foreshadowing, and a lot of stuff that they pointed to that said it was foreshadowing of things to come was absolutely not. How do we know that? Because in those places, everywhere in the New Testament that it tells you this was fulfilled in Isaiah, here, and here, I want you to go to that very specific place that it said this was fulfilled, right? Forget what they done told you. Just get that reference that they gave you, right? Now, take that reference, take what they said, sit it on the shelf. Take that reference. When you go back to this reference, I need you to read that reference in its proper context. Because what you will see happen is what they pulled out applied to something else, right? And it shows us the fulfillment of that particular thing right in there. Within that very same chapter, or within the next couple chapters to come in that same book. It literally shows you that. It tells you that. But when you go back and you just, because I used to do it, I used to check, but I just used to go and see to make sure that the scripture said what it said in the Old Testament, right? So I said, oh yeah, it does say that. And boom, I go back and start reading. not thinking I should probably read this in its proper context, right? So a lot of things is taken out of context. A lot of things that may have been kept in context, people who teach it take it out of context. And you just got all of this craziness going on and a lot of misunderstanding of the scriptures. But if we can first understand that Yahuwah said no human sacrifice. You can't eat human sacrifices. None of this stuff, right? Nothing. Like we talked about the other day, even the human sacrifice of the New Testament, if Yahuwah had said, okay, see, what you'll see, guys, and I go back to the if Yahuwah had authorized it. If you go through there and read it, if you just go through and read it like it says without anybody's teaching on interpreting this, right, you will see a man who was crucified because the people didn't like the message he was bringing, right? And after he was crucified, he rose from the grave, right? And it said people had even seen him walking about, right? Okay, so that's what that says. But what happens is the teachings that are added in around that, they craftily take the scriptures and they said, okay, so this applies to this, and this applies to the first resurrection, and this applies to this, and this, the Passover was a foreshadowing of this. They start taking it and start trying to make them connect when it really doesn't. It's hocus pocus. It's the sleight of hand. It's the Jedi-Mind trick, and it's easy to be taken by it if you don't already know what Yahuwah has said. If you know Yahuwah has said no human sacrifice, it will cause red flags to immediately go up. And he didn't just say it once. He didn't just say it twice. He constantly repeated it, right? So if you know what Yahuwah says, and that's where you hear people say, oh, the Bible contradicts itself. Well, I wonder why. People never get that far sometimes to find out why it seems to be contradicting itself. It really does. And there are some people that's been preaching the word, and they're solid teachers. But they'll still even tell you that there are no contradictions there. Why? Because they still hold on to the blood sacrifice, because although they study, apparently their eyes haven't been open to the blood sacrifice. And they're like, I listen to them, they're like really sincere, like they love the Most High, right? But they still don't see that they're holding on to a blood sacrifice. It's like, how come you have not made that connection? Because I can tell by the way they teach, most of their teachings is straight out the New Testament. It's like, how do you bring balance with that? How do you bring balance to that with the authority? Who's the authority? JC was never the authority. Whether he was God or whether he was man, he is not the authority. Yahuwah is the authority, right? Yahuwah said, don't eat flesh, don't drink blood. What JC say? Eat and drink this. Eat this bread. It represents my flesh. Here is my blood. It drank my blood. This represents my blood. So think about this, y'all. We're not even supposed to act like we're doing what Yahuwah said we're not supposed to do. That's what this gets you to do. It has you acting like you're doing this. So now, every Sunday or once a month in church, or if you taking your human blood sacrifice with you out the doors of the church into your Hebrew roots, you're still eating his flesh and drinking his blood. What do Yahuwah say about eating flesh? That's cannibalism, people. What do Yahuwah say about the blood? Pour it out. Burn it up. Like when you cooking food, when you eat meat, matter of fact, sacrifices is food. Unless it's a burnt offering, then it's burnt completely up, right? Because you sinned, right? Nobody gets to partake of this meat, right? We'll burn it completely up. I mean, you bring your best ones, gonna take money out your household, right? People, if we would just and this is not some deep revelation. You can simply get this by simply reading through it. What's funny is you will see a lot of people on some of these videos in some places where allow you to leave comments when people are talking about this. People who are not even in the church, who weren't even raised in the church, if they go through and read this, they get it just like that. They get it just like that. And it blows my mind on how much you have to break the mental state the hocus pocus that has been enacted against you because you fight against the truth of Yahuwah's word, right? You may experience some blessings, but you don't experience them in a full for real. You can't tell me you experience them fully, right? You can't sit here and lie to me and tell me you experience these blessings fully if you're still holding on to a blood sacrifice. I know. I've been there. You don't, right? You really don't. Especially if you're holding on to that blood sacrifice and you got stuff going on in your body, right? Because what does Yahuwah teach us about that? When you hold on to this blood, a lot of people that hold on to this blood sacrifice, a lot of time they tend to stay sick. They tend to constantly have things going wrong in their body, and they're praying and hoping and believing and praying to this human blood sacrifice that is going to heal them. But what did Yahuwah tell us to do? What does Yahuwah teach us to do? He causes us to think, and he wants us to grow. Listen, son, you're sick because you keep eating poison. Stop eating the poison. Cleanse your body out, right? Feed it life, right? That's the general message, right? Do what's right. Take care of your body. It causes us to be responsible. Over here, the blood human sacrifice, oh, forgive me for my sins, heal my body, but you're still eating pork, and you're still doing things that's causing you to be sick, high blood pressure, whatever you got going on in your body. If it wasn't like a outside trauma where you got into a car accident or something like that, it's your doing. It's your doing while you're sick, right? Because if we follow Yahuwah's commands, we follow his Torah. What is his Torah? It's truth. Oh, yeah, your words are truth. Your Torah is truth, right? It's time for us to awaken to the truth, people. Return to the ways of Yah. Here is how you get your healing, right? And why does he walk us through these steps? This is what you should eat, right? This is what you shouldn't eat, because it helps us to think, right? If something is going on, okay, what laws have I violated? What eating laws have I violated that's caused my blood pressure to be high? Am I consuming too much of something? Or, it causes you to think, and you begin to do the process of elimination yourself, right? Everything is there for your healing when you can live in perfect health. It's up to you not to be lazy, to go and see what it says. Oh, and you can literally heal yourself. But that's too much work for some people. They want to keep on eating on the way to the grave. And if you choose to do that, I guess that's okay for you, right? But don't call on Yah to heal you if you refuse to follow his commands. He said, quit eating the pork, but you want to continue eating the pork? Stop praying to me. Just like you told your mom. Don't pray to these people, right? They look like it, but they not doing it. They filthy in their hearts. Don't pray for these people no more. They won't even follow the simplest commands. Okay, right? Okay. So I got on all of that with this bloodless, they call it a bloodless sacrifice, but it's disgusting. You're committing cannibalism, people. You're doing communion? Stop it. Just stop it. Every time you think about communion, think about cannibalism. That's what it is. Yahuwah said, don't eat flesh, don't drink blood. JC tell you, eat my flesh, drink my blood. We ain't supposed to do it for play. We ain't supposed to pretend. Why do we know we ain't supposed to pretend? What do Yahuwah tell us to put in here? Think on, right? He said, meditate on my words, right? Meditate on my words, right? And when you meditate on them here, they become a sign upon your hand, and you begin to act it out, right? Whatever you're thinking about, you begin to act out. That's what's in your heart. If you putting JC in your heart, and he telling you, putting his words in your mind, eat my flesh, drink my blood, you begin to act it out. Eating the flesh, the bread, communion, wafer, loaf. In Catholic church, you biting a piece of bread, drinking out that same nasty cup the Pope and everybody else in the mass drinking out of. Probably get herpes in the mouth. All of this, you should get what's coming to you, right? You should get every bit of what's coming to you, because you're not keeping the words of Yah. And if we're ignorant of it, and we all have been, okay, I really missed it on that one. Father, forgive us. Thank you for awakening us to the truth, right? Put that stuff away. Begin doing what's right, right? Now, we look like the heretics. We look like the blasphemers when we put all of this stuff away. When you step back and look at it, it makes you want to spit on the ground. It's disgusting, right? All this time we acting like we're eating flesh and we're drinking blood. Everything Yahuwah told us not to do, the church is teaching you the opposite, right? That's how you can find the leaven that's been added in this book. If anything in this book, and you'll find it all through the New Testament, if you find that back there, you need to double check. Go see what Yahuwah says. Is they doing this in physical form? Are they acting like they're doing this? Because we ain't supposed to act like we're doing something that Yahuwah told us not to do, right? Even if my kids know curse words, the off limits. That was too close. You almost said it. I'm gonna get you because you're walking a fine line here. We don't need gray lines, right? We need solid black and white lines. New Testament grays a lot of stuff. And like I said, if you're not familiar with the words of Yah, yeah, you're right. Paul says do anything, deception or lies at all costs. I take issue with Paul, but we ain't gonna get on Paul today because Paul is crafty because Paul knows the law. And when people know the law, they can twist it in a kind of way, just like the authors of the New Testament, the whole Josephus family, all of them, all of them, all of them, all of them created the New Testament books, right? I put that thing up there. I showed y'all who created each book, although they're teaching in church. Or we don't know who wrote this. Oh, Matthew wrote this book. No, Josephus and his family wrote this, right? Okay, but so no blood sacrificing, people, none at all. Yahuwah stopped it. He didn't want it done, period. When he brought him out of bondage, he said, this is what I require. These are the words of life here, right? These are the words of life. How do we know? Because everything, he said, just stop it all the way. He said, I'm going to destroy you. I don't want the sacrificing. I don't want the sacrificing. Stop killing my animals. Matter of fact, when he said after this last captivity, when we go back to our land, when he descends among his people, when he resides among his people, he said, no one will hurt in my holy mountain. And all my holy mountain, in the place where I reside, no one will hurt, right? No animals. What did he talk about the animals? The animal, he said, I'm going to make a covenant with the animals, right? He said they're going to live in peace. A child going to be able to play by a snake hole. The snake going to come out and not even mess with the baby. All of it. You read that part? So why they over here creating another temple, starting to slaughter animals again? Does nobody read? Does nobody read? Nobody read. Like it's in plain sight for everybody to see. We're not even returning to it. He said, I never desired it in the first place. I simply want you to slaughter this bull. These are the sacrifices. Repentance, right? Thanksgiving. From the lips. Worship from the lips. From this beast, right? This beast. Us. This bull, right? This is what we slaughter. Let me keep reading. Imagine it is the year 525 CE. No one at that time knew it was 525. There was a real man named Dionysius Exiguus. I think that's how you spell it. Say it. Mr. Exiguus was a pretty pagan guy, but he didn't know it. He was a monk and lived in a part of the world called Scythia, an ancient region of Asia north of the Black Sea. Remember, monks are unknown to the writings, as are nuns, popes, and cardinals. These pagan positions originate from Hinduism. Gnosticism merged with Mithraism. But Mr. Exiguus had no idea he was tolling as a monk for absolutely no reason at all. During this time, for over 1,000 years after him, the city of Rome was venerated above every other place on earth, even in Jerusalem. The greatest pilgrimage a person could make was to the city of Rome. Finally, the opportunity came for Mr. Exiguus to make his journey to this city of his dreams. Upon arriving, he witnessed things that disgusted his devout sensibilities. These people were drunken, and orgies were in full swing. Ivy, ribbons, wreaths, garbage, and madness were all around him. He was exasperated at the spectacle. What did he witness? He saw the authentic, raw, and abominable pagan festival of the winter solstice, Saturnalia, also called Pagan. Hold on, I think I said that wrong, y'all. Paganalia. I think that's how you say it. Okay. Saturnalia, also called Paganalia, the nativity festival of the sun. The ivy was considered the sacred plant of Saturn, so this custom has become an important feature of the nativity all over the earth. It was an ancient belief that the winter sun was slowly dying because it was seen rising further and further to the south each morning. Solstice means sun stop. By December 25th, the ancient world's solstice, it could be recognized as a beginning to the return northward. Hold on. By December 25th, the ancient world's solstice, it could be recognized as beginning to return northward and was said to be reborn. It marked the time for a celebration that lasted for days. Carved idols were exchanged. People hung wreaths on their doors and wore them around their necks as an echo of the symbol of Nimrod, the branch of a tree. The branch of a tree twisted into a circle, symbolic of the shape of the sun and the annual cycle. Hawaiians use a lai, L-A-I, lai, a circle of brightly colored flowers as a sacred religious emblem of protection and friendship. This rebirth of the sun came 9 months, a gestation cycle. It came 9 months after Easter, when the Earth Mother was impregnated by the sun at the crossing of the vernal equinox, when Mithras, the sun, slayed the bull, the constellation of Taurus, and the sun moved to the next constellation, bringing on warmer weather. If all this sounds complicated and wild, that's why it was called the Sacred Mysteries. The writings call it folly. Folly is the religion of fools, and if what they were doing was foolishness, falsehood, lies, and of no profit, then the writings explain why people will say, to you, the nations will come from the ends of the earth and say, our fathers have inherited nothing but falsehood, futility, and things of no profit. That's found in Jeremiah chapter 16, verse 19. We have made a lie our refuge and falsehood our hiding place. That's found in Isaiah chapter 28, verse 15. This is why what you are reading will cause what the prophet says. The understanding of this message will bring sheer terror. Also found in Isaiah 28 and 19. The world which the writings speak of, which we are to be set apart, or Kodesh, remember Kodesh means set apart, which we are to be set apart from, is the broad road of tradition we see everywhere, based on folly. We are called out of ignorance and repent of observing Easter, birthdays, Christmas, Halloween, Sunday, the Nimrod-based year cycle, and so on. But we don't show hatred for people who are still trapped in them, but love. Nimrod, Constantine, Exodus, and many others ruled the world from the grave, when practices they established are still observed by people today. All right, y'all, so we're going to this next section where it's talking about AD and BC, right? The little time markers, like it was 1500 BC, right? So it's about to give you the definitions of all this stuff. What time is it? Okay, so this might be the last section. Oh, yeah, this is definitely gonna be the last section. What did I tell you, little girl? Why are you trying to move that? Stop. See? Stop. No. Stop. No, leave it alone. Trying to get them little freeze pops in the freezer. Hey, little baby. Okay, y'all. AD, BC. I told you, wait till I'm done. I'm almost done, Bella. Under the topic calendar, your encyclopedia would mention Dionysus, Exiguus. When he became upset by what he saw being practiced, he visited Rome. Exiguus believed the beginning of the year was January the 1st, as most do today. Exegus knew the pagan festival of Saturnalia, the rebirth of the sun at the winter solstice, had to go. He proposed to change the reason for observing the tide. All the customs, the date, and symbols remained in place. He camouflaged the behavior, making it the birthday of Yahusha to him, IESV. Okay. It says making the birthday of Yahusha, or he wouldn't have known Yahusha by that name. He would have known him by IESV. Okay. Making the birthday of Yahusha to him, IESV, not the rebirth of the sun. He estimated the birth of, I will just say IESV, had been 525 years prior to his visit. He imagined that the end of the Roman Babylonian year of his birth was year 0, making that year Yahusha's 525th birthday. He further declared it to be the 525th year of our Lord. Our word for year in the Latin word, our word for year is the Latin word anno, A-N-N-O, and our Lord is the Latin word Domini. So that's where they get AD from. Anno Domini. So if you see AD is, like he said, 525 AD, or 525 Anno Domini, or 525 in a year of our Lord. This produced our present numbering of years. Now we have embraced his estimate worldwide and have recorded all history since his time with references to what year of our Lord AD events happened. There had never been anyone thinking it was the year 524 because this idea had not yet been established. He referenced everything that happened before the birth as before Christ, giving us the term BC. Since the time of Exegus, scholars have refined the accuracy of his estimate. It turns out that he was 5 years off and should have determined that year as 530 AD. When you will see this when you look at any timeline in the study versions of the writings, the scholars print the birth of Yahusha as 4 BC to 6 BC. That's really very funny because it means that we entered the 21st century back in 1996 AD. No one recognizes this gaffe, and besides, it's just a made-up date invented by man. Hold on. Okay, so here's a look. He's not our Mashiach. I'm gonna read this. It says it's not true, but he says right here. I'm gonna just skip that. It says, I just put JC, which they're referring to as Mashiach, which we know he is not. Was not born on December 25th, but during the fall during the festival of Sukkot. I'm gonna just cross that whole thing out, because people won't know the real truth. He wasn't even a real person anyway, but y'all heard that from me. But we're gonna read it as he has his book. Some people not ready for like the real truth, right? But I'm giving you truth, trying to wake you up in layers so you can really see the real truth of the matter. That's why you hear me say, if he had been a real person and if he did exist. Okay, but we ain't gonna get into that just yet. We just gonna keep walking through it. You gotta go from kindergarten to first grade, and sometimes it's like just lay it on me. But sometimes it's such a shock to people that they turn completely away. It's like, you need to understand how you were fooled, right? So you can, okay. And I only say that because that's how, excuse me, that's how Yahuwah was waking me up. He showed me in layers how we had been put, so he showed me in layers how we had been put to sleep, and how each year they added more lies on top of more lies, to where when we're born into this big lie, that's the only thing we know and we grow up in it. And so that's what we know to be the truth, which is really not truth at all, right? And so going through this, because it's something we grew up in and it's like a part of us, he has to slowly, it's like a really bad wound. You can't go ham on addressing this bad painful wound. You have to be careful, right? You got to put a little I don't know. It just depends. You gotta, especially with children, right? You can't just go in and pour alcohol on it, right? Then the screaming is gonna be worse. Then you can cause too much pain. There's a better way to address this wound, right? Depending on how bad it is now, depending on how bad it is and what if life-saving measures are needed, right? You got to deal with it. So based on how deep you were steeped in lies will depend on the type of scalpel and the operating tools Yahuwah decides to use on you, right? So with me, I just say from my personal experience, he had to wake me up in layers. In layers, I'm like, oh, I can see that. Okay, you got that? Okay, now let me reveal the next little bit of truth, right? You thought that was something. Wait a minute. I'm like, oh, I'm still in paganism. Oh my gosh, right? It's like I thought I got out of it. Let me show you. Yahuwah, he's faithful and he'll walk with you, right? Okay, stop using JC, but I was clinging on to Yahusha, right? Now let me just show you. Let me just, okay, you understand that? Okay, now let me show you just a little bit further. Boom, 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 like, oh, I'm still holding on to pagan. I'm still doing what it, gotta put it all away, right? He shows you truth bit by bit. He give you what you can handle. And when you really get it, now it's your choice to put it away. Okay, now what you going to do with this information that I gave you now? Go ahead, take a look at it. Study it. You let me know what you get from this. And did it line up with what I told you, that my promises? It absolutely don't. So what do we do with this? We put it away. We put it far, far away. We burn them. We stomp on them. We kick them to the ground. We knock them over. We push them off. Look, we push them off bridges into the river. Right? Okay, I'm just saying. It's as the days go by, some of the stuff, I don't know, y'all might be ready for it. It's going to get a little more shocking to you maybe, but we'll just see. But just know our base is Yahuwah and Yahuwah alone. Everything we have to measure against the authority, right? Everything we have to measure against the authority. Okay. It has been carefully calculated based on the exact time when Zechariah's duties in the temple occurred, Luke chapter 1, and the visitation Miriam made to his wife, Elisheba, or Elizabeth, that Mary gave birth to the Prince of Peace during Tabernacles. He was not the Prince of Peace, right? He didn't bring no type of peace. And we know when they use this and they pull it out of the books of the law and the prophets, this Prince of Peace was talking about who? We talked about it a few times. This Prince of Peace was Hezekiah. They simply took his name, the definition of his name, and expanded it and allowed people's minds to run wild with it, right? But we can clearly deduce that and see that if we just read what came before it, right? Because before it, they talk about Hezekiah's daddy. A little bit before that, they talk about Hezekiah's granddaddy. And before that, it talk about Hezekiah's great-granddaddy. It was talking about them in a succession in the same friggin' chapter, people, and the two previous chapters, right? So it would tell us this next one who would come would be a Prince of Peace, and all those things that they gave out, mighty God, all that stuff. It's talking about King Hezekiah, right? They gave you the expanded form of his name instead of just putting Hezekiah there. I did like a whole teaching on that. I really did. Matter of fact, I'll share it today. I know it's really long. Matter of fact, I'll share the video that I did. Hold on. Let's put Hezekiah. And I put my notes so y'all can look at it. I'm telling you, the shenanigans that's pulled, and if we don't catch it, our mind just run into places, and they let our mind run, and then they take the already truncated teachers and they attach it to your wild running mind, and you just latch onto it, right? And you got all this folly and error all over the place, right? Okay. So, for the sake of this, what he's saying here, okay, it says Miriam gave birth. We'll say I crossed out Prince of Peace because he was not. Miriam gave birth to JC during Tabernacles, an annual observance given at Leviticus 23 and Deuteronomy chapter 16. He literally tabernacled, made his tent among men. Well, you was flesh and your mama and daddy put you in the manger, tent, whatever. I'm just saying, y'all. Go ahead. Roman years are wrong. The first month is supposed to follow Exodus 12 and 2. The Satanists and Wiccans know more about the concealed origins of Christian traditions than Christians do, and often laugh behind their backs. Trina, I just read this. I looked up and saw your comment. She said, I cried laughing when I saw them idols on the streets. I know, right? I'm just like, I saw it. There's a couple of videos out there. If y'all don't know, hold on, connection is unstable. It's doing it on YouTube. I think I'm sitting here, it's still going. Still see the light. But people say, oh no, this wasn't this. But they got a whole news channel saying, well, the people, they realized when COVID started running rampant through there and they're calling on their gods, all these pagan shrine gods, all this stuff, and they were still dying left and right all over the streets. They said, off with the heads of these gods, right? Because they not hearing our cries. I'm like, yes, push them off the bridge. Like they smashing idols. I'm like, oh, that the world would get this, right? Idols, wood, stone, deaf, dumb. They realize that there are idols that they've been praying to all this time. They got billions of idols all over the place in India. They started smashing. They said, all y'all deaf and dumb. Y'all ain't heard none of our prayers, and our people still dying in the street. What good is it that we have you, right? What good is it that we worship you? I'm like, bless Yah, right? Now, I don't know what they turned to after that or who they turned to. Hopefully they cried out to Yah. Even if they don't know his name, they just look up to heaven. If anybody is there, they should, something like that, you know. The living God, show yourself. Help us, please. Yahuwah will honor that type of prayer and cry more than some of this other shenaniganized stuff that people teach you to do, right? Okay. The Satanists and Wiccans know more about the concealed origins of Christian traditions than Christians do, and often laugh behind their backs. And they do. The Nazarene Barbarian Church, the one in the hands of the barbarians, stole the traditions of the folk pagan people. What it could not absorb was turned into their own perverse fantasies. The errors that were absorbed from paganism are in plain sight. The reason people don't perceive them as witchcraft is because only those initiated in the occult know what they mean. Outsiders only see the esoteric meaning, a superficial crust masking the real meaning. The initiated perceive the esoteric meaning. A deceiver or a liar, interloper or schemer is in our midst and has planted his seeds or his teachings. The great dragon was hurled down, the ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. And that's found in Revelations 12:9. Mr. Exodus was very sincere, but was deceived and lacked knowledge. Teachers have said that it would not be a good idea to change the calendar to the correct year. It would just confuse the children. Like, that's not what y'all doing now? Who is the real kook? The one who ignores the truth and wallows in fantasy, or the one who exposes the illusions for what they really are? Inventing man-made methods of worshiping Yahuwah are not new, and he has given several specific commands forbidding his people from worshiping in pagan designs or adding anything to his observances. During the Exodus from Egypt, the children of Israel imitated the pagan Egyptians when they fabricated the apsis or the golden calf. It had never been their intention to offend him, but they constructed an altar and were going to sacrifice to him on the following day. But they mixed an Egyptian custom that they were accustomed to into worshiping him. This calf had the sun disk between its horns. It was also the time of the year in the spring when a calf or bull image was an important pagan item. The sun was in the constellation of Taurus, or the bull, If something is very pagan and put into the background and camouflage, we should be very careful not to mix it into our worship of him. He does not change. Yet he talks about this, yet we can still see him mixing the human blood sacrifice all through here, because everything else he may understand, but this particular thing he's still not understanding. And I think let me say I understand why. I think some truths are Yahuwah leave for his people to reveal, right? And it's like, okay, we'll let y'all get that stuff as you're coming in or whatever, but here is the truth, right? And so we hear truth coming from Yahuwah's people, those who have returned to him and who have submitted themselves to him, right? And so those things, although some of the blinders have been taken off, he completely removes all the blinders. Just think about the different kings, right? Look, think about the different kings. There's a couple kings in there that Yahuwah said was good, and they follow in the ways of their ancestor David, who Yahuwah considered a good king, right? By stopping all the pagan worship and stuff. But some of them, you will notice it says some of them didn't remove all the pagan shrines, right? And we can kind of liken this, them people leaving Christianity, but still holding on to that human blood sacrifice. And JC, you just changed his name to Yahushua, Yeshua, Yahushua, Yahweh, right? We liken that to that, right? You remove all this other stuff, but you failed to tear down the pagan temples. You removed all the pagan worship out of the temple, but you left the structure standing, right? You moved all the furniture, the benches, and everything out of the church, the pulpit, all the people, everything, but you left the church standing. That's what we can liken that to. When you come out of the church, come out of her, my people. When we come out of her, yeah, we bring the it's like we come out of her, but we bring her with her, and we bring her with us in a way by holding on to the thing that holds that together, that human blood sacrifice, right? You have to let all of it go. So a lot of time Yahuwah wakes you up in those stages, like I said before, where you see these small things happening on the lower levels. Then as you grow and you're diligent about truth, applying truth to your life, he begins to show you. Like now I can see that he has always been showing me, but as I begin to grow and begin to recognize stuff, now I'm like, oh, you've been showing me this all along, right? So I ain't gonna say he waits till you get here. What happens is, as you grow, you're able to recognize and you're able to understand, oh, well, shoot, you've been showing me this all along. You were showing me here, you were showing me here, but I couldn't recognize it because I didn't recognize truth. I didn't recognize what your word says. Just like somebody could be lost in a forest somewhere, and if they don't understand like what grows in that forest and what's considered food and what's not food, you could literally die right in the middle of having food and edible things all around, things that will nourish and sustain you. You could literally die in a food forest because you don't recognize food. That would be crazy, right? That would be crazy. People who are native to the land and they understand, oh, that's edible, get that. We plant that. Like, how many of y'all knew dandelions was edible? The root, the stem, and the flower is completely edible. I shared a thing yesterday. I always share. I shared quite a few posts about dandelions over the last few weeks. But they teach you that it's weeds and stuff, and using pesticides to kill stuff that literally could bring you life. Like dandelions, dandelion is a herb that brings healing to the nations, right? It's a herb that brings healing to your body when you're sick. If you don't recognize truth, you can die. Truth can be all around you. Life can be all around you. But if you don't recognize it, you can die in the midst of your salvation or in the midst of your health. All because you didn't understand and you didn't know how to apply. You had all the ingredients to live a very long, strong, healthy life, but you couldn't recognize it. And that's what's happening. That's what's happening. Ooh, I like that. Yes, it's like a new pair of glasses, Melissa. Yes. Reading through Yahuwah's Torah is like getting a new pair of glasses. It's like you thought you could see, but when you go to get that new exam and it's update, it's like, wait a minute. This is crystal clear. Like, wait, let me change. And then once you put the truth on the crystal clear, let me adjust your sight just a little bit because
It's a little worse than what you thought, right? You thought you could see pretty good, but when you, let me show you the difference. Take these off, now put your old ones back on. What? How? And it's like, it almost hurts to put them back on, right? And that's literally how it is when you understand and know the truth of Yahuwah's word. It hurts to go back and still trying to hold on to that blood sacrifice, like you have to let it go. It's if you're really clinging to the words of Yah, there is no way that human blood sacrifice can cling to you and you will completely put it away. Truth will cause you to push out the lies. If you're searching for truth and you want to apply truth, right? But there are some that come to the truth and choose to turn away from it. And those people, by default, Yahuwah say, get the strong delusion, right? Because you rejected my truth that could have set you free, I'm going to reject you. But not just you. You and your children too, right? Because you're going to go on in deception. And what you're going to teach your children? You're going to teach your children deception, right? Remember that? Parents shall not be punished for the sins of the children, and children should not be punished for the sins of the parents. But if you continue in the sins of your parents or pick up the sins of your children, then you are punished like they are, right? Not only will I reject you, but I'm going to reject your children too. It's a principle that's already in the working, right? You do it to yourself. You fall right into that law that's forever etched in stone. It's a covenant of salt. Remember we talked today, the covenant of salt? It's a covenant of salt. If you reject the truth, by default, you get the strong delusion, right? And it is a strong delusion. Christianity, the religions, it is a strong delusion because you refuse to accept the truth of Yahuwah's word. What is truth? Oh, Yah, your Torah is truth. Your instruction. That's what Torah means. Instruction, teaching. It's the words of life. Your Torah is true. Your words are true. All right, y'all. But we got to stop right here because I'm at an hour and 16 minutes and we didn't get through this whole part. So let me just pause right here. We'll pick this up tomorrow. We got to go. I know people got to go to work. All right, y'all. So we stopped on page 74. We started on page 71 of Fossilized Customs, and we stopped on page 74. We'll pick that back up tomorrow. Now, remember, I'll share the video where I went into details about King Hezekiah and expanded form of his name. And I'll share the notes. I know my notes are pretty long, so it may not all fit in one post. I know some people are like, darn, is you writing a book? We just asked for a simple thing. But I tend to give you like all the resources and stuff because that's how we get in trouble sometimes. Oh, well, show me the scripture for that. Okay, boom, all right, well, I see that. But no, I like to give you the full context of everything so you don't just have stuff that's, oh, all right, I don't know what to do with that. Let me show you what to do with that, right? And I'll give it all to you. It's a quick read, but when you post it in the comment section, it looked like a whole book. But if you look at it on the page, it's really like a page, but y'all get it. All right. Rebecca, yes, ma'am, I do herbal medicine. Dandelion has so many great health purposes. I know, right? Okay, sis. All right, y'all. So today is Thursday, May the 20th, 2021, day 158 of year 3 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets, and of the 3-year consecutive day count, day 827. Like I just said, we read 2 Chronicles 27, 28, and 29, and we read Fossilized Customs, page 71 through 74. I remember to share that about Hezekiah. If you get a chance to read it or watch the video, please do. And leave me a comment. If you know more, shucks, help me add to my learning. Help a sister out. Let's share all good things with one another, right? Okay. Hold on. All right, so let's go to the blessing, which is found in Deuteronomy chapter 6. I'm sorry, Numbers chapter 6. Numbers chapter 6, verses 22 through 27. Remember, the first 21 verses is the Nazirite vow. Man or woman can take the Nazirite vow as according to Yahuwah. And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto Aaron and unto his sons, saying, On this wise ye shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them, May Yahuwah bless us and keep us. May Yahuwah make his face shine upon us and be gracious unto us. May Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon us and give us peace. And they shall put my name. Whose name? Yahuwah's name. They shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. Not JC name, not Yeshua name, not Yahusha, Yahosha, Yahawashai, any Yahuwah alone. They shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. All right, beautiful people. That's it. We out of here. Oh, that's good. Trina said, talking about nature. I learned some stuff. I learned some stuff watching the show Naked and Afraid. I know. We always watching like the Discovery channels and stuff like that. You do. You learn a whole lot. All right, y'all. That's it. We out here. Love y'all. See y'all in the morning, 7:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Bruce.